And here we are with Mr. Untitled, Untilted, and everything else, Mr. Stuart Farrar. So, as to say, you've had your first boxing match on Saturday. That's flown by. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
so for people who don't recognise Stuart, you've been the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour, the man behind the camera who's been
Yep.
beyond fantastic. The real sort of start behind all these studio podcasts. I mean, obviously with Nigel and everyone at Purple Media and Chapel Play Studios, but you've been nothing but supportive. And seeing you getting in the ring on Saturday was just unbelievable. But first and foremost, has it sunk in you? How are you feeling?
Sore today, but still on a good vibe from it. Like, feel really positive from it still.
So with throughout all the training, obviously the sort of levels have been upped and they've been changing, and
Mm.
it's all sort of come out of nowhere. So we started roughly about, was it November, September? When was it?
Yeah, sort of end of October, beginning of November, sort of thing. Like, we started training, then obviously when the actual training was supposed to have happened, like mid-February.
And there's loads that went into this. So off the bat, we just started just training anyway, because obviously you
Mm.
helped me out with the studio, and then the fitness started stepping up and doing a bit of pads, a bit of this and the other. When you first made that decision to sign up for the first fight, you've actually had like in a sporting sense. What point did it sink in what you've actually signed up for?
Maybe like 2-3 weeks prior to the fight, it started sinking in, going like, "Oh hell, my fight is like soon." Like, Christ, where's that time gone, sort of thing. And time has flown by ridiculously fast. Um, but yeah, like even on Saturday, it was like, oh, doing my medicals for a fight. This is it. This is like, it's about to get real really quickly.
Because this is something that I think has been really good to see from this side of things is one, not just your involvement with the training side of things, but also
Mm.
your involvement in the fight world and the MMA side of things. Because obviously, helping produce this podcast about fighting and MMA specifically,
Yeah.
you're spending time with other fighters, you're going to fight shows. I mean, I want you to tell the story of your first experience at a fight show because it is beyond traumatizing. It's hilarious.
Yeah, that was an interesting one, wasn't it? Because obviously we were there helping Eric's gear.
Yeah, we're sponsoring the
And
Battle Arena
then
show here.
yeah, sponsoring it, and then obviously 2 o'clock or whatever, the first fight, and it's just dead silence. And obviously, lad was unfortunate to have his arm broken, so you could just hear the crying and the it was horrible.
Oh, it was so.
It was intense because no one was there. It was just dead silent.
Because this is the thing, when it comes to fight shows, normally it's an atmosphere, it's a bit of a party, but like any
Yeah,
sort of thing, if it's an all day thing, it takes a while for everyone to, have a couple of drinks, set an atmosphere in. And earlier on in the card, it's going to be the less experienced guys. So in this case, it was two amateurs fighting,
yeah.
two debuts. So you got to set the picture. You got to really take in how horrible this was. So we have two guys. They think, you know what? I've had my camp 8 weeks or whatever it was, and training before that. It's my first chance. Sold the tickets. My mates are right. I'm on nice and early. Big party afterwards.
Yeah.
Starts a bit back and forth.
He
And I'm
didn't have
telling,
that party, did
and I'm saying to
he?
Stuart as well, like, you know what? Just get a feel for it. You've got your own one coming up. This is going to be just a bit of a feeler for what an environment's going to be like. And you just hear third. Okay, cool, crack on again, third, and then just scream because he's landed on his arm. He's dislocated, and he's not in a good way.
It wasn't pretty, was it?
And we're all just like, oh. Oh, what was that? And it's me looking Stuart in the eye and saying, don't worry, you'll be all right. You'll be all right, I promise. And he's like, okay, cool. So I'm not doing MMA. Which are actually
Well,
not.
you say that now.
Never say never.
Exactly.
But then moving on from there and all the rest of it, so the training, we're going to sort of dart back and forth with timelines. But when it came to the fight itself, the absolute spotlight. So obviously we've been doing our sparring, doing your training anyway.
Yeah.
First moment, so there you are, about to walk out. What was going through your head at that point?
To be honest, I have no idea what was going through my head. Like, part of me was just like focus on just being in the moment. Because obviously this doesn't happen to everyone. Unless you sign up for it, it's going to happen. But for me, it was just enjoy the moment, embrace it, like you always said. Just embrace that because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, sort of thing. So yeah, obviously his song kind of threw me off a little bit with the whole aqua. That was it. It was like, oh god. So yeah, it was. Yeah, I can't explain what was going through my head because there wasn't much going through my head. It was just embracing the moment and just kind of get in the ring, have a good time, get the job done. And that's what I did.
And this is sort of what you could really see in there. You were just having fun with it. And one
Yeah.
thing that was always my concern going into it was the moment being too much and sort of thinking, oh shit, what have I signed up for? And you kind of get in there, you're like, now what? but you know, you got stuck in, you were throwing, you were taking shots, you were having that experience, which is really what I wanted for you seeing this. Because obviously from coaching anyway, number one thing for me was getting you there safe, getting you through all the rounds, making sure
Yeah.
you don't, you know, compromise yourself, put yourself in a bad spot, and, you know, all these sort of things. And seeing you on the other side of it, I'm like, fantastic, sweet, perfect as that. And there was one moment afterwards, like, oh, it was so beautiful to see. Obviously, like, through the time training, obviously the family are all there, like, fucking hell, was he signed up? Was he going to be all right? And seeing you and your dad just having that moment afterwards.
Oh yeah, we don't talk about that moment. That was that was heartbreaking.
So there we are. You tell the story. You tell it, go on.
So I've had my medical done. I come out and I'm going to go get changed, whatever. And then of course my dad's there, and my dad doesn't cry, and that was the point. He came and gave me a hug, and I was okay. But then he started crying, and then that was it. I started crying. You started crying. Mum started. It was horrible. Emotions everywhere.
But this was the thing, though. I think it was just a number of things going on. Obviously, there's a lot of things we don't want to talk about too much, but there's loads of just that moment. And this is
Yeah.
something I really wanted for you as well, to have that time of just, this is terrifying for everyone involved, but you were brave enough to face it, or you went through that. You, with both hands, you went after it. And then seeing your family and they all, thought, God, your
Yeah.
mum as well. She was mortified by it, but she was.
Mum wasn't. Yeah, she wasn't a big fan from the start. As soon as we, like, both me and Luke, when we said we were doing it, she wasn't a huge fan of it. And Katie as well. She didn't say anything about the fight, like being scared about it or being worried about it or anything. The entire time I'm training for it. And then it was that night afterwards. She was like, I genuinely was shaking. Like, I was so scared for you. And I was like, nothing to be scared about. Like, we've been training. We know we're going to be taking hits. We know we're going to be giving hits. Everything's good in the world.
But this is where this is an interesting challenge amongst other things you've done, like the wolf run, for example. That kind of thing. Yes, there's risk involved, but it's a very different thing to plan for, to conceive mentally, and obviously afterwards, it's a very different feeling.
Yeah.
Like, regards of doing the wolf run collectively and doing this fight, how do those two compare? Those two events?
To be honest, I'd rather do the boxing than the wolf run again.
No running, fuck that.
Wolf runs. You there's nothing to it. You kind of go to the event and then that's it. You can train for it. You don't train for it doesn't matter. You're still going to achieve the same thing. Whereas the boxing, you have to be thrown out of your comfort zone because you've got to train for it. You got to be prepared for it. But then you've also got the atmosphere to be prepared for. I wasn't prepared for that atmosphere. I didn't realize how, there was people shouting. I could hear you. I could hear the purple team. I could hear my family, and then I'm trying to listen to my corner team going, keep that guard tight, make sure you're throwing jabs and whatever not. And it's hard to take all of that in as well as trying to, face your opponent and remember what it is you're exactly doing. So, yeah, it was...
There's a lot of little details in all of that. And again, it's the mix of what the occasion is versus what a normal fight would be. Because again, this occasion is your first ever fight, this big milestone, this thing you're training for, but also it's also fun. It's also everything. And it's just drawing this weird line. Because even like we said about the guy you fought, like, yes, he's your opponent, but he's also raising money for an important charity. So it's like,
Exactly.
You can't hate the guy. It's a bit like, oh.
No. Everyone was out there. And everyone in the collar boxing, everyone said it at the beginning. It's there to just have fun. Like, we're not there to maliciously get a win or, try and knock the opponent out. There was none of that. Everyone was there for the same thing. Raise money, have fun with it, and come out laughing on the other side.
There's a few things I wanted to ask you about this in general. And one of the main things was, having gone through this process, is there anything you would have done differently?
I'd have definitely maybe done more days training, put some more time into it, because you kind of realize that although, yes, doing however many days it was, 4 or 5 days worth of training, it was only over hour slots. You can only get so much in those hour slots. But definitely doing more, I think, could have done more of like the slipping, the rolling, understanding more of the combos and everything else. So if I could have done it differently, I'd have definitely taken more time into, rather than 8 weeks of just 2 days training sessions and then obviously your sessions. So yeah, more time would have been ideal.
As I say,
But
it's always a tricky one, especially when you're in there. Because one thing is the moment. Because when you're doing the pad rounds, you're doing the
mm,
sparring. There's pressure. There's the intensity of it all. But also the main thing is the moment isn't there. It's different.
exactly. And I've said this to someone when we were doing the training, and they were like, "Yeah, you're ready." I'm going, "Yeah, I might be ready, but pad work's easier than actually going up against someone. As soon as you step in front of someone, that's it. It kind of all goes out the window. You know, you kind of forget elements. Doing the pad works, you know, I'm doing all the slipping, I'm doing the rolling. But as soon as I got in that ring, that was it. I was, you know, shit, I should have slipped. Shit, I should have, you know, rolled that. But
Pads don't hit back.
no, exactly. It's like, and I said it to someone, you know, pads are the easiest thing in the world. So, you know, when you say you're ready, don't say you're ready because you're not.
Yeah, it's definitely a very different thing to appreciate. And then the more you start to realize this is
Yeah.
why early on into our training with sparring was taken into account, because that's the first surprise people get. They watch Rocky a few times. They think, okay, oh, you know, I'll just bite down on my gum shoot and I'll get on with it, which you can,
Yeah.
but you need to be aware of what it is you're, you know, dealing with. Like, now, because initially when you're off
Yeah.
balance, you take a shot, it's scary, you feel a bit disorientated, and not everyone can have the composure for it. So to get that
Yeah.
initial shock out of the way, I think that did you a world of good as well. Same the way your
Yeah.
sparring shaped up near the end of the camp as well.
You know, it's exactly when we did our first spar together and I had a bloody nose and that, and you turned around and went, don't worry about it. That's the worst that's going to happen. You know, I had a few more after that and that was it. I wasn't phased by it. So getting that mentality of get used to being hit in the head, get used to being punched in the face. And then suddenly, you know, once you're in the ring, you're kind of forgetting those elements and you're working on everything else. So, yeah, it was just one less thing to worry about once you was actually in the ring.
One thing I wanted to go into as well, like the nature of what this sort of performance was for you, this whole exhibition, this event,
Mm.
it's a very it's a weird balance because it's very serious. It's a fight. It's, you know, life and death and all these things, but it's also a fun charity event.
Yeah.
When it started getting a bit tough, where you have a rough session, stuff's going on outside of things, the usual bits and bobs.
Yeah.
What kept you coming back for the next one? What kept you seeing it through?
To be honest, you know, as I said to you, my brother was doing it as well. So what I didn't want to do was let him down.
Mm.
But then everybody that's backed me, everybody that's bought a seat, everybody that's bought a ticket to stand for it, you kind of, you know, you have to go, they're there to support you. You know, you can't just back down. Everything was done for charity. You know, you bail out, you bail out. You know, that's on you. But for me, it wasn't an option. I couldn't pull out. I had to follow it through. You know, things were tough. I had that one training session. Just it was horrible. Like I knew exactly where I failed and everything. I just wasn't in the mental state for it. But I still went to the training, still did the sparring sessions, but I hated it.
Mm.
I came out crying. I came out like panic attack or whatever. But like I say, going in and doing it for charity, you know, remembering that people are there to support you, they're there to, you know, just have as much of a good time as you are. That's kind of, you know, that was it. That's all that kept me going through.
There's a lot to that, and this is where you really get that character development. Because this is something I was very sort of clear with, especially when speaking to your family about the whole sort of situation.
Mm.
That you fighting this fight and going on to do whatever else, that's not the point.
No.
The point is when you have to go through this process of preparing, it's horrible.
Yeah.
There's some parts that are over the moon, you feel like the best you've ever felt and everything.
Mm.
And there's times where you feel the lowest, the most incompetent, all these other things in your world. And to be able to overcome that yourself, dig yourself out of there, because when you're in that such a low point of just, oh shit,
Yeah.
what have I signed up for?
Yeah.
But also something I found, especially when it comes to a fight sense, if I start losing and sparring or losing whatever else, I take that very personally. I take it as I'm incompetent. I can't do this to a certain extent. This isn't good enough, not good enough. And like yourself, being a sort of perfectionist with things, you want to do things to a certain standard. You want to be able to hold your own and do this sort of thing. So again, overcoming that, but only you can really do that. Like we spoke about where it came to speaking to saving your partner and your friends. It's like, oh, just call it. No, it's not the same.
No, exactly. And, you know, I think that's where I've benefited from you being on my side is that you get exactly like what's going on. You understand, you know, it's not easy, you know, mentally and physically. It's a hardship. you're either going to put the work in or you're not. And, you know, once you start putting the work in, it's really obvious that that person is putting that work in. But, yeah, most of the sessions were great. And I'd always say they were great sessions. I'd done this, done that. But then you get those sessions, just didn't work out. I felt like crap afterwards. Just, yeah, I don't want to do it. But, you get through those because you got the people that understand it. You know, people are like, you're doing fine, you're doing great. Like, don't worry about that. You did really well on this element. That's what you want to hear. You want to hear those little bits of, you know, your jabs are getting better, your posture's getting better, your balance is getting better. Once those start falling into place, you kind of start going, well, actually, I'm not doing too bad. So
there's a quote. It's on Shoebox in Northampton. It's on their wall. It's basically you can't see the picture if you're in the frame, and that kind of idea that everything that you're doing, all these incremental changes, it's so hard to see. But on reflection, looking back, you can see just your composure with everything, moving around, and just your attitude towards it. Like as soon as you said you signed up for it, what was the first thing we did?
We went straight into the ring.
Now,
straight into that ring with everybody else in there.
And how did it make you feel?
Really uncomfortable. It was way out of my comfort zone. Like clearly, I've never been in a ring before. I've never had a fight before. So yeah, getting in that ring down BSC was really uncomfortable. But then, as you said, weeks down the line, it started getting more comfortable. I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just getting in the ring and started warming up and whatever not. So yeah, doing those elements and getting that out of the way early was, it was great.
Now, if you compare that feeling to walking into the ring on Saturday, what felt more uncomfortable?
The walkout was more uncomfortable. As soon as I was in that ring, you know, everything felt a bit more in place. Obviously, the atmosphere of the room was a little different to what I'm used to. So I can't say I was comfortable, but yeah, that walkout and then getting in the ring, as soon as I was there, you know, it was like, okay, now I know what I'm doing. Like, I've trained for this bit, so let's crack on.
The amount of boxers and kickboxers I talk to, and the same sort of thing, the anxiety of falling over your ass, getting in the ropes, is almost worse than a fight to some extent. I remember like
that was my biggest worry, you know, getting through, opening up the ropes, getting through. Didn't want to fall ass over to it.
It's like WWE guys. Like, yes, it's rehearsed and the rest of it, but I respect getting in and out those ropes. God, that's awkward. At least with the cage is a big door.
Yeah, nice. I mean, as soon as the fight was over, I started walking out, and they were like, "No, you need to get your reward." And I'm like, "Oh, we're doing that, are we?"
Now, throughout the rounds, obviously you hear the corner advice. How were you taking that information in? Did you absorb much of what happened in the previous rounds? How were you in that corner?
So I tried to take on as much as I possibly could, and you know, Derek's a great guy. He called everything that I should have listened to, and I was trying my best to listen to everything he was saying. But sometimes I think he was hearing it as well, so he was anticipating what I was going to do. But then that kind of, I had to alter what I was doing. But in that sense, yeah, he just, everything that he was saying, you try to take on board, but it's really difficult to do that while you're getting punched in the face and you're trying to then have to counter it or fight back. You kind of falls out the window a little bit.
Yeah, it's a very hard thing to, one, go out there and react to what's going on and also be proactive, but also to understand what's been happening, reflect on that, and then adjust. And obviously they're going to be doing the same thing as well, and constantly doing that. And obviously you've got your first like adrenaline dump of, the fuck just happened?
Yeah, exactly. Like as soon as my first round was out of the way, Derek literally stood in front of me and he was like, "You need to keep that guard tight, make sure you're doing your 1-2, 1-2." And I was like, right, I can do that. And I was trying, like second round I tried, but then obviously I got gassed, like I was burning out on that second round. But you know, that biggest thing that we've always said, you forget how to breathe in the fights. Like I've done it many times, like in the sparring sessions with you and Nigel and the others at Rough and Ready. You forget how to breathe. That blowing out, you just forget about it and you go, I could have done so much better. Could have done it, as long as I was breathing, I could have done a lot better, I think.
There's always, you can't play that game. This whole thing of, I said this to you before, it's compliance. So you have your overall standard, your training standard, but being able to convert that in the actual ring is an art in itself, the art of being relaxed. Like say when talking about Jordan Vicenik, about when he fights, he's got the composure to, during the fight, to not only just be breathing, also be scoring it, being aware of things, but that comes from that extra level of just confidence and being familiar with it. Like that's someone who's had 20 plus MMA fights. That was your first ever fight ever. Like worlds apart. Yeah. And like just the way you've handled the whole process has been fantastic. As to say, you could always say, do more of this, do more of that. But your attitude towards all the sessions, like there's people who take a shot and fold early, like just make excuses and all this kind of thing. And you've been fantastic with all of it. Obviously, like there's been the odd sessions where it's like, I'm spent from this, or work's been hard, or this, that, and the things happen. But you're fight week. So the nature of fight week for a lot of people, it's either weight cutting or it's just chilling out. So work-wise, you had you had somewhere to go. Where were you in fight week?
So fight week, I had to go to Copenhagen. So Tuesday to Friday, I was away, and then obviously the fight was on Saturday. So training didn't really happen that week. So
the nature of work outside of training, obviously, when it comes to things like this, production and things like there's a requirement and there's customers and all this sort of thing. And when you need to go somewhere, you need to go somewhere. Yeah. And that's how it is. And being able to get back last minute, I can't help but feel not having to go through the face-off and the speculation of who your opponent was and all this, that and the other. How did you feel finally seeing your opponent?
So obviously Thursday was match-up night, and then obviously there was a big event and I couldn't be there. So my brother texted me, he's like, oh, you've got Adam. I'm like, right, who's Adam? I can't put a face to a name. So he sent me a picture and I was like, yeah, I don't know who he is. So in my head, I started going, have I sparred with him? Have I trained with him? And I'm going, I have no idea what to expect. Like, he's not seen me, I've not seen him. I don't know what's going to happen. But I said it to someone, I think that will, it could either work into our advantage, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know our weakness, you don't know our strengths. So he wasn't going into the fight looking for something specific. I wasn't going into the fight looking for something specific. And I think, that's what kind of gave us a good fight and a fair fight, to be honest. There was a lot of matchups where it was like, questionable. But I think, he was great. He did exactly what he was set out to do, and he kept that going, and he was consistent in the fight to an extent. So I can't fault the guy for what he did in the fight. He did really well. So,
and this is what the general consensus was after that fight, regardless of scoring, who won, this, that, and the other. I mean, fairly arbitrary, regardless if it was close or not. It was razor thin. Yeah. All the rounds were very competitive. Yeah. Both had your moments. Both showed a lot of heart with it. And again, is what it is. But no, both got a very fair fight, and I think that's what you'd do a lot more from. If you went out there and just absolutely flatlined someone who didn't want to be there, I don't think you'd have had the same scratch of the itch of the training camps giving you that whole sort of that release of all the stress, the build-up, the anxiety, the excitement. All these things are very similar, but the absolute release of just, okay, I'm knackered, I'm spent, I gave it my all, and this is what it was there for.
Yeah, those jabs, they're tiring.
It's hard.
It's horrible. I can't, throwing those jabs, even to now, it's the soreness in the shoulder, the stiffness. It's just, you forget, that's what people actually go through in MMA. So I take my hat off to MMA fighters and boxers every day of the week. It's tiring.
Now, I'm not going to keep
people are like, it's easy, it's really.
Everyone becomes a backseat coach. Now, there's a few things I want to sort of leave you on before we take up too much of your time. But one thing is, obviously, your own fight gives you enough sort of worry about. What about watching your brother later on in the night?
Jesus, me brother watching that, I went crazy. I shouted at that boy as much as I possibly could. I mean, you shouted at him just as much as well. But his first round, he took on the first round all guns blazing, and he did all right with it. But then I think he just gassed himself out from it. Absolutely started windmilling it, and then equally the other opponent was. But I think everyone forgets we're not amateurs, we're not even beginners. We're just real
giving it a go. But my question really was emotionally, how did you find seeing him opposed to how did you?
I was excited. I was super excited. Everyone wants to fight their brother or sibling. And at the beginning of the whole thing, we both said, what's the chances we'll be put together? What is the chances? And, there was an element of I hope we're put against each other. But then equally, there was, we got closer and closer to fight night, and we were like, no, I don't want to fight you. I want to watch your fight. And, we both said, if we can't watch each other's fights, we're going to be gutted. Because obviously we've got to be 3 fights ready. So the fact I was 5th and he was 15th, it was, it was really cool. Because then I could see that fight, enjoy the atmosphere. And it was it was a real emotional turmoil. Not as much as it was for my mum.
As to say, both parents there seeing it got the heartbreak of that. But no, both came out relatively unscathed. Still pretty.
Well,
As much as you went in anyway. I can't be held responsible for that. There's so much in this whole experience I'm so proud of both of you for. And just taking all this. But one thing whilst I've got you on the podcast is to really highlight to everyone involved. And Nigel as well behind the editing side. Like, without you guys, I would not be sat right here right now having this professional quality podcast. And I can't thank you guys enough. Like Chapel Place, Purple Media, Stuart and Nigel. Everyone involved at all these stages. Like, there's just a little post on social media as one thing, but saying it, I can't say it any louder. I could say it a lot louder now, probably hurt his ears trying to listen to it back, but if I ruin the sound levels, probably cause more problem. But that's another conversation for another day. But no, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for me.
No, I can't thank you enough for the support for the training, so
And everything in between. So, regards of what's next, in the sense of what did this achievement mean to you, and do you feel there's anything else you'd want to get ticked off the list? Obviously, I haven't got to commit to it now, but more as an idea.
No, I think, biggest thing for me at the beginning was always the weight loss. So, as you know, the big weight loss from just training, 107.9 kilograms at the beginning, like back in November, and then, coming to...
Like low 90s now?
To this month sort of thing, 95.1, something like that. I've always struggled with weight, and I've always found going to the gym really daunting, and just, I can't be bothered. It takes up my personal time where I just want to sit and relax. But then, once you're in the gym, once you're training and then coming out of it, you kind of go, that wasn't too bad. I actually really enjoyed that. So, I think I found a whole new level of fitness, and whether I keep that up, probably.
Now, just before we leave everyone on a few little things, one thing I wanted to ask you is your advice to someone else in a similar position to you. So what I mean by that is someone working the 9 to 5, someone who struggles with weight loss. What advice would you give to them to get them started?
So whether you're going through with a PT or whether or not you're going before work or after work, find someone that wants to go with you. I think that was my biggest help as well, with Nigel wanting to go to the gym as well. And, we pushed each other. You going? Yes. Are you going? No. Why not? We were pointing fingers, you're not going because you can't be asked. Okay, fine. But no, finding someone that wants to go with you is probably the best thing I could advise anybody. And, sticking with it. It's going to be tough to begin with, but, it's getting into the habit of things. It takes a while to get into habits, doesn't it? So as soon as you pass those few weeks or whatever, that's it. You start to enjoy it. It starts to get a little bit more comfortable. And that's what it is. It's just getting out of that comfort zone.
I think as well you said it there, like rebuilding the habits. Like obviously when we first started training together, you were heavier. Again, things like that. And it's being able to, I don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
We train, you enjoy it, and naturally those sort of things you think, I don't really feel like I need this as much. I don't feel like I want that as much.
Exactly.
You start prioritising the thing you want to do in the evening or something you like doing. That's why I feel, I'm not saying these boxing matches are things for everyone, but an occasion, an event, a point to aim for. I think that's so important to have that goal, and also a consequence of, I think with the boxing especially for you, like you said there, as opposed to the wolf run, you had a consequence if you didn't prepare for it.
Yeah.
With the wolf run, you just
can walk it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's not going to punch you in the face.
Exactly.
It might fall on your ass, but if you're in shape, you'll fall on your ass as well.
You can skip an obstacle. I don't want to do monkey bars. I'll skip it.
Yeah, no one's going to call you out.
Exactly. You're going to get called out in the boxing.
Exactly that. You've got to be honest with it.
Exactly.
I'm just really proud of you, my friend. I mean, it's to say there's loads in this that we've sort of scratched the surface on. But seeing how much you've grown as a person is just fantastic to see. And I think everyone listening can take some sort of respect from that as to what it takes to take that step, even if it's not to professional ranks, even if it's just that first step on the ladder, whatever it may be. But thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Before we wrap up, let's say thank you to our sponsor, the English Hypnotist. So when it comes to the mental side of any kind of preparation, will be it in a fighting sense or in a business sense, whatever you're doing, taking ownership of your mental development and that kind of confidence, and getting rid of any mental obstacles. So when I prepared for my last fight, I signed up for sessions with Richard Hart, the English Hypnotist, because I thought he's supporting the podcast. I want to see what it's all about, really get involved with it all. And it made a world of difference. And that's something I've been implementing with our training with Stuart. Again, the sort of, not to anywhere near the extent of Richard, but taking ownership of that mental side, the way you talk to yourself, all these sort of things. And I can't recommend it enough. He supports my brand, he supports many other brands, and he's a fantastic man. Richard Hart, the English Hypnotist, definitely drop him a message to get involved. And obviously Chapel Play Studios for making this possible, and Stuart and Nigel, the main men. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
My man.